Welcome to Her Life Unscripted podcast, inspiring burnt out, stressed out, and stretched thin women to embrace the unscriptedness of life. Hosted by Anna Osborne.
Hello, ladies, and welcome to Her Life Unscripted, episode 54. I am your host, Anna Osborne, and I am just absolutely delighted to be here with all of you today. It is the first week of May, which is just, it feels like a kickoff to summer. It is my wedding anniversary. It is my baby sister's birthday. It's Mother's Day. It's Memorial Day. I just love May. It's not too hot yet, so I am excited to be here with all of you, just slowing down and catching up and just having a grand time together. So welcome to the show. We are obviously, with a new month, diving into a new theme for the month. And this theme is something that I'm really excited about because we are going to be looking at this from all different angles. And I've got some great interviews to share with you guys from other experts in this world. So I'm just really, really excited to be able to be here with all of you today. And what we're going to be talking about today is this idea called a soft landing, and really kind of how do we create that in our life? And it's a term that I use a lot. I talk about it on the podcast. I use it in my psychotherapy practice. It's a mindset that I try to have in terms of my marriage and my parenting and things like that. So this idea really kind of came from recognizing, first of all, how important it is, but second of all, realizing that I need to kind of expand a little bit with you guys on what I mean when I say a soft landing. So let's back up a few steps. We are going to be talking about this idea of creating a soft landing throughout the entire month of May. And so what I really want to do with today's show is actually be able to describe to you what I mean when I say that, so that we can actually just start expanding on it as the month goes on. I've got an amazing interior designer that's coming on next week, Ramya Warrior, and she helps people build their sanctuaries in their homes, right? Their sacred place, which is truly, truly a soft landing. And then I've got two other great guests that are coming on, really talking about how we can create that soft landing within ourselves, and how when we are silent and experience shame, how that actually prevents us from having that soft place to retreat to, because we have now become very isolated through the shame and also through the silence of our voice. So like I said, we're looking at it from all different angles, but I want to slow down here for a second and just describe to you guys what I mean when I talk about a soft landing. And the reason I think it's so important is because soft landing is actually, I think it's a business term that people talk about in terms of like projecting numbers and contracts and all these sorts of things. And that's so not how I mean what we're talking about today. So just for clarity's sake, that's not what we're talking about today. But what we are talking about is this idea of a soft landing. First of all, what is it? Why are we even bothering talking about it? And how do we really recognize the importance of and work to create such a thing in our lives? So let's start with the first question here. What is a soft landing? A soft landing is being able to have refuge from the world. We typically think of a soft landing when we think about our safe place, right, where we go to retreat from the rest of the world, whether it is an actual place like our home or our office. I know I have worked really hard in my office to have it be a soft landing so that when folks come and visit me here, they get a sense of calm and a sense of peace. I've used a lot of feng shui with the help of the lovely Gina Ballard to be able to create that experience. But it's also something that I feel when I walk into my office, is that soft landing, right? That sense of safety, that sense of feeling taken care of, feeling nurtured. But it's also something that we want to have in our homes, right? We want home to be a safe place. And importantly also is this idea that we want our relationships, at least our key, most important relationships in our lives, to be a soft landing as well, right? Because there's nothing more detrimental or more harmful than not being able to be our authentic selves, right? To be unguarded, unfiltered, to be raw. And we need our relationships, our primary relationships, our partnerships, our relationship with, those one or two special people in the world to be a soft landing. And so when I talk about this idea of creating a soft landing. What I'm really talking about is moving to this place that we can, either within our relationships or within our world, move to in order to be us, unfiltered, unscripted, unfiltered, but really in ways that means we can let our guard down, right? And when we talk about a soft landing, I think one thing that stands out for such importance to me is that we have to have it, right? That we will start to feel so off. Things will not line up. We will not be able to move confidently throughout the world if we don't have a place to retreat to where we can fuel back up. And so, this kind of idea of, well, first of all, what is a soft landing? For most people, it is an actual space they can go to, right? But for other people, it can actually be a place they can retreat to in their mind, something that has fond memories, something they can go to find kind of some respite, right? They need to retreat to that place because the world is so busy and so distracting and so, just grabbing for their attention that they need to be able to retreat somewhere in their mind in order to be able to really have that experience of showing up unfiltered and showing up and being seen. So when I talk about a soft landing, it can be a physical place, it can be an actual relationship, or it can also be a place that we return back to in our mind's eye to be able to have that unconditional acceptance, right? So that's really what the heck it is when I'm talking about it. And so I want to be able to offer both of those definitions because I don't want people listening right now getting stuck and saying, I don't have a safe place. I cannot retreat anywhere. Everywhere I go, I have to be on. That's not the way that we can move about, not with any sort of consistency, right? We're too depleted to do that. So I just want to slow down enough to let you guys know that it doesn't have to be a physical place, although a physical place is an exceptional way to create a soft landing. The other is this idea of why are we talking about it, right? Like, why are we having this conversation? And why did I spend a whole month with this theme, right? And the reason that I did is because as a person who is in relationships, right? With my partner, with my kids, with my family, with my friends, and also as the professional psychotherapist that I am, I know that we have to have attachment. We have to have connection in order to move about the world confidently. And what I hear from people over and over is they share with me that they feel like they're lacking, right? That they have to be perfect, that in order to receive love or deserve love, they have to hit a certain standard. That inner voice is so gosh darn critical that it's tearing them apart and not letting them show up in their imperfectness for fear of judgment or criticism. And so the reason that we're talking about this is because I feel like this phenomenon is almost at epidemic levels with people, and I'm going to speak specifically to women, with women struggling with self-confidence, struggling with this idea of perfection and that they are not accepted because they are not whole. And if they are not whole, then they have to hide away until they become whole again. And the even worse part of that story is that when they hide away, because they don't feel deserving, is that they're not hiding away in a soft place, right? That's not a soft landing. They're typically retreating to a place that feels very depleted, that feels very disconnected, and therefore they're not getting that rejuvenation or restoration that we need to get from our soft landing. So the reason we're talking about this is because it's just so darn important, and it's exceptionally important in order for us to be able to navigate our unscripted lives, right? For those of you that I know I relate to this, and I'm sure there are many of you listening also, that those times in our life when we have been just so depleted and that nothing feels safe, those are not our best moments, right? Those are not the times that we can give to others or even show up in any sort of genuine way because we're so depleted. And we cannot manage the intensity of living an unscripted life if we don't have a soft place to retreat to. And to me, a soft landing looks like open arms, right? Just saying, come on in. You are accepted just as you are. Just as you come. And no matter what, in this moment, you're enough, right? And for me, the reason, again, that I want to spend an entire month talking about this idea is, like I said, because it's so important, but also because I feel like everybody's struggling with it in different ways. We've got all these ideas of Facebook being fake book and Pinterest being Pinterest perfectly. We have all these examples out there of what we're supposed to be. And if we're not, we feel like we're undeserving of that acceptance. And so a soft landing, a place to retreat to, is absolutely pivotal in terms of being able to move about the world confidently and to be able to really thrive in this unconditional acceptance. So that's the reason we're talking about it, because I believe that it's important. And I believe that there's so many of us that are suffering from the pain of not being fully accepted in our imperfection, and therefore our soft landings have become unsafe and we don't gather strength from them. Okay. So my intention from today's show, as I kind of introduce our month-long topic, is to be able to say, a soft landing is vitally important to our survival, and to give you guys some tools to create that soft landing if you really feel like you don't have it, right? Because my wish for all of you is that you do have it at some level, a place to retreat to. Okay. So that's really the intention for what a soft landing is, and obviously the intention for this month of episodes, but really kind of why we're even spending time talking about it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what I want to do is I want to first share with you what is the benefits of having a soft landing. I just touched on it a moment ago, but the most important thing is that when we have a place to draw strength from, whether it is through a relationship or through a place that we can go inside of our home, that warm kind of cozy spot, that the reason it's so important is because we get confidence from it, right? That when you go home and home is safe, home is soft, you get something reflected back to you, which is the most magnificent reflection ever. And that is the reflection of unconditional acceptance. Right? And that allows us to be confident, and not confident in terms of like this egomaniac of I have no flaws, I have no faults, I'm amazing. No. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is this idea of despite our flaws, despite our imperfections, we're whole, we're deserving of unconditional acceptance, right? So when we have that soft landing, that place that we can retreat to, the most amazing thing happens is that we just find ourselves more confident. You think about, cheerleaders, and they've got those spotters, right? And that somebody's up on the top pyramid and there's a couple spotters. There is such greater confidence in terms of going higher on the pyramid when you know you've got enough spotters, right? Like that if you're going to fall, that somebody's there to catch you versus there's big holes or gaps in the system and somebody's going to let you splat on the ground, right? And that really is what a soft landing does, is it allows us to stretch a little farther and be a little bit more a little bit more courageous, take bigger risks, be a little bit more brave, because we know that soft landing doesn't have holes in it, right? That if we fall, when we fall, it's not a matter of, if, it's when, that when we fall, when we stumble, we'll be caught. And so therefore we can be more confident knowing that our failures are not going to be our demise. They're just the lessons we learn on the road. Okay. The second thing is that we gather strength from our soft landing, right? That when we have that place we can retreat to, whether it's in our relationships or in a physical place, is that we actually have the ability to gather strength because we know that we are enough no matter what. And so it's not about being the biggest, baddest, bestest, right? It's about knowing that we have strength in our imperfections, that what we have to offer is more than enough. And that is a huge, huge thing that really allows that soft landing to be something where we gather more momentum, more strength, right? And I think the last thing that stands out for me of why a soft landing is so vitally important and why we need it, why we're even talking about it, is because it offers us comfort. Right? There is nobody listening right now. I'm sorry. You might disagree with this, but I will disagree right back. There's nobody listening that says, you know what? I don't need comfort. At least not authentically, right? There might be some people out there that go, it doesn't bother me. I don't let that stuff bother me. I'm sorry, but I call BS. You are a human being. I remember in Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, she's the COO of Facebook. She wrote in her book, Lean In, that when we hear criticism from people, right, when we hear negative words reflected back to us, especially from people that, just really want to just reinforce to us how crappy we are, that when we hear those words, it's not whether or not those words affect us, because they do, right? We're human. But really it's a measure of how long we hold on to those words and whether or not we integrate them in as truth of who we are. So when somebody tells me, oh yeah, I heard this horrible thing about myself, but it doesn't bother me, I don't care, I call BS, because yeah, it hurts. It did hurt you. And that's awesome that you also didn't incorporate it in as your truth. So the way I tie that back, right, is that being able to have the comfort of a soft landing is going, yeah, you know what, that person over there, whoever they may be, they don't really like me, right? I'm not their cup of tea. But I know that at the end of the day, I can find comfort and kind of nurse those wounds of how that might have hurt in a way that actually feels really productive and allows me to feel whole again, to feel comforted, and to also not get lost in this idea that we shouldn't be affected by things that are hurtful, right? And so to me, a soft landing really creates this idea of comfort. So those, I think, not wanting to go on too long today, because we've got some great shows coming up all on this idea and all on this topic, is that being able to have a soft landing is vitally important to our success, to our confidence, to our ability to find and seek comfort, to be able to draw strength from. There are so many things that make it important. And the reason that we're talking about it is because I feel like right now we are at epidemic levels of people not having soft landings. And if you are listening right now and that rings true for you, my heart is with you, because it does not feel good to go about the world and not feel like we have any refuge, to feel like we have nowhere to go with any respite. So that piece is hugely important to me. And you're going to get lots of ideas over this next month about how to start creating a soft landing in your life. And, I will let those shows speak for themselves. But I just want to say right now that kind of buying into this idea that it's super important to have a soft landing is kind of step one, right? If you think that you are an island and you can always be on an island and everything's fantastic, then, that's not going to work, right? Part of you has to buy into this idea of, yes, I need to be able to have comfort and seek it and have it fulfill me. But the other part too, I think, is being able to not only buy in, recognize it's something that you need, but the other is actively developing it, right? That creating a soft landing isn't a passive thing, right? That in order to really have that space that we can retreat to, we have to show up vulnerably. And if we show up guarded and defensive and disconnected, it will be harder to create a soft landing. So I really want to encourage you, those of you who are listening who don't have that connection to a soft landing, to recognize that it's an active process, that in order for our relationships to be safe, for our home to be safe, for our workplace to be safe, that we have to actively work to create that. And there are times where we have to step back and maybe recognize that the relationship or the home that we are in doesn't have the potential to allow us to have a soft landing. And I'm sorry if that is your truth right now, because I know that is very difficult to come to that realization. But it can also be very freeing to realize that maybe, just maybe, this relationship that you're in never will have the potential to be safe or unfiltered or authentic, right? And as overwhelming as that might be in the second, it's also realizing that relationships can change, right? That the relationship you signed on for all those years ago with that best friend who just isn't growing along with you, that it's okay to make peace with that and move out of that space. The last thing I want to leave you guys with, well, a couple things, but one that stands out to me is also kind of recognizing the sacredness of a soft landing, that you're not going to have every relationship be the one that can be this intimate, connected, unguarded relationship, right? That's not how it works. And that every relationship is not going to look that way. But there should be at least one or two that do, right? It's not about quantity, it's about quality. And the other piece too is that not every space we move into is going to be a soft landing. That typically we've just got one or two places that we can retreat to be filled back up, and that is totally normal to just have a few. If we have 20 different places we go to get refuge, part of it is, that's awesome, but part of it also, it diminishes. It's hard to have that much vulnerability and show up that authentically, part of that starts to kind of feel like we're just going through the motions rather than showing up in a way that really allows that to be a place of strength and confidence and comfort. Okay. So I did find this cool quote actually yesterday. It was from Sweatpants and Coffee. I don't know if any of you guys follow them on Facebook, but they're fun to follow. They always have these great inspirational quotes. But this one said, "May you rest in the space of good enough. You are good. You are enough. You are sufficient in this moment, just as you are. You deserve goodness and kindness and hope and help. This is my wish for you." And it looks like Nanea Hoffman is the one that wrote it, Nanea Hoffman. And so I'll include that quote in the show notes, but I just love that because that speaks to this idea of a soft landing, right? Where we are unconditionally accepted exactly as we show up. So that really is my wish for you, is that you rest in that space of good enough, knowing you are good, you are enough, you are sufficient in this moment just as you are. Okay, so that's what we're talking about all month. I'm so excited we got a chance to slow down and give you guys this precursor to what we're really talking about. But let that kind of float around for a little bit. Think of these ways of, okay, do I have a soft landing? Do I have a place that I can go to refuel? Or am I lacking that in my life? And if I'm lacking it, how do I start actively try to create that? And some of it's going to be trial and error, right? Where you kind of extend yourself a little bit or reach to create that connection and it doesn't turn out the way that you planned. That's okay, right? It just, like my mom always said, it's just as important to cross things off the list as it is to put things on the list. And sometimes we do need to cross off certain people or certain relationships to realize that they just aren't safe for us, right? That emotionally we can't move into a space that we really want with that particular relationship. Okay. The other thing I want to share with you guys is, especially talking about this idea of soft landing, it so speaks to the Shine Retreat that we are hosting, Mari and I, in late September. And we still have a few spots left, so I would love to encourage you guys to sign up. But if you are really struggling with this concept of good enough and knowing that, you are good and you are enough, I really encourage you to come to our retreat. It's going to be absolutely amazing. And the focus is so on connection and restoration and fun. But it's really about this idea of, as women, as we are giving, how do we create this space to also know that we are unconditionally accepted in our imperfections? And we just have some amazing, amazing activities planned and workshops, and just the whole weekend is just going to be this enrichment of being able to really dive into that space of good enough and come out of it in an unconditionally accepted place. So I encourage you guys to check out the shineretreatforwomen.com, as of course, we would love, love, love to have you there. And as always, you can reach out to me via the SpeakPipe app or to Anna at herlifeunscripted.com. I would love to hear from you guys and just kind of, hear about your own journey through soft landings and what you've been able to do to really create that. And if you struggled with it, what have been your main struggles? I think there is so much that we can learn from each other in terms of, going through similar journeys. And sometimes if we can share our stumbling blocks with people, it can be just an absolute godsend. So thank you so much for letting me come into your worlds, into your hearts today. And I'm excited about our month of May's topics. And I cannot wait to share the great interviews that I've got coming up the rest of the month. All right, you guys, take care. Talk to you soon.
Want to learn about the latest retreats, workshops, and speaking events hosted by Anna? Head over to herlifeunscripted.com to get in on all the juicy details. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast so we can continue to grow our amazing audience. Lastly, be sure and send in your voice feedback via the SpeakPipe app or to Anna at herlifeunscripted.com. We can't wait to hear from you.